My name is Mike Wall, and I'm passionate about exploring health. Come on a journey with me across Newfoundland and Labrador as we learn about wellness here at home. Our health goes beyond our body. This is our home. It's full of life and resources and endless places to explore. It's given us everything we know and love. And on some level, I think everybody appreciates our planet. So why have we taken advantage of it? On a recent trip to Ottawa, I met with two really passionate researchers that completely changed my perspective on the impact humans are having on our environment. They sent me on a journey to experience the environmental impacts of climate change here in our province. From the north coast of Labrador and thinning sea ice to the southern shores of Newfoundland and plastics in our ocean. It's honestly a conversation I'll never forget. I'd never been to the Museum of Nature before or toured their amazing exhibits on the Canadian ecosystems, both past and present. I was lucky enough to meet with Dr. Jeff Sorella, Vice President of Research and Collections, who showed me around.
Jeff, this place is incredible. We pulled up, it's like a castle, and then you come inside and there's so many different exhibits here. You know, why was this place created and what's the history of it?
Yeah, so we are in the Canadian Museum of Nature, and the Museum of Nature has its origins in the Geological Survey of Canada. So in the latter part of the 1800s, the Geological Survey was working in the country trying to understand the mineral diversity, the rock diversity, and the diversity of life from coast to coast to coast. And they, over the decades built up a large collection of objects, and eventually they wanted to be able to share the objects, the specimens that they've gathered with the public. And they also needed a place to carry on their work. So they petitioned the government to build a national museum in Canada. And this is the result. So the Victoria Memorial Museum building opened to the Canadian public in 1912. And now the Canadian Museum of Nature continues its important work to understand biodiversity and geodiversity across Canada and around the world. So the museum's vision is a sustainable natural future for everybody. And so this building is a public facility. We welcome Canadians and people from around the world to come visit us, to learn about Canada's natural diversity, to learn about the beauty of the country, its geodiversity, and what they can do in their own lives to make a difference to help us achieve that sustainable future.
Yeah, that's right. Well, there's floors upon floors of exhibits here, but you chose this place in particular. What's so special about this exhibit?
Yeah, so we're standing in front of an exhibit called Beyond Ice in the Canada Goose Arctic Gallery at the museum. And Beyond Ice was a co-creation between the National Film Board and the museum. And normally we see these large panels of ice on these steel structures, and the exhibit tells the story of the transformative changes caused by climate change in the Arctic that are affecting all living things in the Arctic. Unfortunately, the ice melted overnight. Not planned, but I think it's an apt metaphor for exactly what the exhibit's trying to tell us, that things are changing very rapidly. Normally, you can touch the ice and feel the Arctic change on your fingertips. Mike, I want to show you something in the rest of the gallery. So, I mentioned that the climate has been changing, constantly, and I want to show you what that's meant for the Canadian Arctic. So we are entering a part of the Canada Goose Arctic Gallery that talks about climate and the changes that have happened in the climate on planet Earth over many, many millions of years. So about 69 million years ago, the Arctic was much warmer. Dinosaurs lived there. 65 million years ago, asteroid comes in from outer space, wipes out the dinosaurs, and the planet changes almost overnight. We enter the age of mammals. Mammal evolution starts to take off. So by about 55 million years ago in the Eocene period, at Ellesmere Island, for example, big island in what is now the high Canadian Arctic, it was warmer than when the dinosaurs existed, and there was large hippo-like animals that lived up there. We know that from the fossil record. Very slowly, the climate continued to change through time over millions of years. By 3.5 million years ago, the Canadian Arctic was a temperate forest. Okay? There was large animals like camels living in the Arctic, and those camels were about twice the size of a modern camel, which you see there. By about 110,000 years ago, the northern hemisphere of Earth entered an ice age, okay? And things cooled off. About 10,000 years ago, the glaciers finally melted, and the planet started to slowly warm up. The pace of climate change has increased substantially over the last 120 or so years. So if you look at the concentration of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, which scientists measure around the world, that carbon dioxide concentration starts to rapidly increase at the start of the Industrial Revolution, when we're pumping all kinds of emissions into the environment, okay? And the CO2 concentration just goes up, 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 and up. And as the CO2 concentration goes up, the Earth gets warmer. And those emissions are directly caused by humans.
That's really alarming. I didn't really know that much about it before I came here today, so I really appreciate you showing me around.
Yeah, my pleasure. And I mean, if you really want to learn about the Arctic, you need to go to the Arctic.
Yeah, well, that's easier said than done. I don't have an expedition like you.
The Arctic, yeah, the Arctic's far, but you live in Newfoundland and Labrador. You can, stay in your home province. Go to Labrador. Lots of northern communities that are close to the Arctic. They're Arctic-like environments, and they are feeling the changes of climate change every single day.
My conversation with Jeff had me curious about the impacts of climate change here in our province. Now, if you live in a larger urban center, you probably don't see these impacts, so I had to look to rural communities. I found an organization that was working out of Nain that technically wouldn't exist if it wasn't for climate change. So I flew to the north coast of Labrador to meet with Rex, the manager of Nunatsiavut operations for SmartIce. When we said we wanted to visit Nain, our friends at Provincial Airlines were quick to help us out. As we flew north, the geography changed to rocky hills, snow, and ice. Nain is surrounded by hills, so the only means of transport was across the ice, and I could see snowmobiles traveling like a highway in and out of town. Immediately, I could see how the changing environment could impact everything in a place like this. So we're here at the SmartIce office, and you guys are doing some pretty cool stuff. Tell us about what you do here.
So we do two things here actually. SmartIce, we're a social enterprise, and one of the main things that we do is here at the Northern Production Center here in Nain, is we actually assemble smart buoys. So what they do is that we can tell by the temperature difference between the seawater and the ice, we can determine how thick the ice is.
Has there been a shift in the ice recently?
Yeah, I mean, like again, from 2009 to now, people my age and people younger, that we're seeing climate changes have an effect here in Nain and Nunatsiavut. I mean, back when I was a young fella, sometimes the harbour out there would be freezing, sometimes as early as early December. But now, we're seeing it lift, the ice form later and later. Near like last year, it didn't form in the harbour until really well into middle January or so. Back in 2009, 2010, we had rain here in January.
Right.
It's supposed to be minus 40, but
right.
For those 2 years we had rain. So, in the span of my lifespan, we're seeing climate change a lot.
Yeah, I've been seeing like people going back and forth over the ice. Why is it so critical to the community here?
Well, I mean, the sea ice, it's been said, I've said it 100 times, I'll say it 100 other times, really it is our highway. We need the sea ice to go to get our food, to go get seals, to go get char, to go get fish. It's not a part of our culture, the sea ice is our culture. We have to go to practice our traditional activity, to go hunting, to go fishing, to go to our traditional lands. If the sea ice isn't there, it's really going to have a huge effect on our culture.
I was really excited to learn more after talking to Rex, but like anything, it's always best to see it for yourself. So we geared up and attached a sensor to our sled and headed out on the ice. The first thing I realized was just how vast the area is. The hills around us were rocky and barren, and the ice was as far as the eye could see. You realize there's no ships bringing in food in the winter, so the ice becomes a road to access fishing spots and hunting grounds for food. It's also the only way to get wood to stay warm and access cabins for recreation and a break from day-to-day life. These things are all critical to the health of the people that live here. That means thinning ice isn't just a safety risk, but it also threatens the way of life of northern communities and their culture.
So Rex, this is a huge area. Why did you pick this spot in particular?
So this was decided to be a good spot because it hits two things that we really want. One is the Labrador Winter Trail that you see marked behind us. It's an intersection of that. So I mean, a lot of people travel between here to other southerly communities. So this would be one good reason why it's here, because a lot of people use it. Yeah. And the second reason is that it actually crosses the ship's track of the Boise Bay ship.
That's what that is over there.
Yep.
Okay.
So it's for the safety of the workers who have to maintain it and come out here when the ship is here to pull the pontoons out. It's just a good indicator that they can use to keep themselves safe as well when they're coming out to do their work.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, you'd think that the ice would be a little more vulnerable. So what's the difference between this buoy that stays in the ice and then the one that goes behind the sled, the 𝐒𝐿𝐷 sensor?
So this smart buoy, this is measuring the ice exactly where it is. It doesn't measure, 5 feet out, 10 feet out. Where it is, it's measuring the ice thickness right then and there. So this is great in locations where people travel frequently. Like I said, right now, this is at the Labrador Winter Trails intersection in Voisey Bayship. So a lot of people come through here. So if they're coming in this location, they can grab the data on this from the website to see how thick the ice is here. Mm. And the smart 𝐒𝐿𝐷 is great for everywhere else.
Yeah.
So, a lot of people come this way, but because Nain is on a peninsula, people can go north or south or east or west pretty much anywhere on the sea ice.
Yeah.
With the portable smart 𝐒𝐿𝐷, we go to the other locations where people may frequent, up to the cabins, up to fishing places where people get wood. It's just great for pretty much going everywhere else where the smart buoy is. And that's the whole point, like you said, is getting this data and getting the data to the people so they can see and make informed decisions while they're traveling on the sea ice.
Rex, I really appreciate you showing me this. This is a pretty remote location for somebody like myself. I know it's not for you. This is only a small thing. We said we're going up for a skidoo ride, and you said it was about a half an hour, but thanks for taking me out and showing me this.
Yeah, no problem. I'm glad you're here and got to see our beautiful land and how SmartIce works.
Well, I hope we can take the long way home so I can see more of it because I really enjoyed that ride out.
Oh, we will.
Okay, good.
We will.
Perfect.
A lot of people aren't aware of the impacts of climate change having somebody who's so far from, people on Avalon. But I mean, the reality is it's a part of their province. It would be nice if a lot of more people know, and for you guys to come out and help us spread the word. That's something that we'd like to see and to share a part of our culture as well to other people who may not be familiar with it. Yeah, I'm glad you guys came up and helped, let other people be aware. Climate change is real and it is affecting people. May not be them, but I mean, it has real effect on other people as well.
After hearing about the effects of climate change up north and what people are doing to cope with it, I continued my chat with Jeff from the Museum of Nature. This time we talked about a problem that isn't even 100 years old, but is quickly becoming one of the biggest threats to our environment, in particular in the oceans around our island. Plastic.
Okay, Mike, now we're in an exhibit called Ocean Plastics in the Water Gallery. And what this exhibit is showing is the impact of plastics on the marine environment. So behind us, these are live jellyfish, okay? Fantastical creatures in this aquarium. In the aquarium to my right is, structures that look like jellyfish. They're actually plastic bags. Yeah. And young sea turtles can't tell the difference between jellyfish and small plastic bags. And they feed on these things. And over half of sea turtles have plastic in their digestive systems because they're eating this plastic junk that has gotten into our marine environments.
Yeah, well, plastic hasn't been around for that long. So I guess the big question is, how do we get to this point? How did we end up getting buried in plastic?
Yeah, good question indeed. So for millennia, humans lived in concert with the natural environment. They lived sustainably. After the Second World War, the things started to change, and all of a sudden somebody invented plastics, right? And they were cheap, they were useful. People started using them in their daily lives, and all kinds of possibilities opened up. And as the decades marched forward, people used these things more and more and more. Plastics now are everywhere. They're throughout the world. Microplastics have been found in the deepest parts of the oceans. They've been found in the high Arctic. They've been found many different ecosystems on land. They're probably plastic in you right now. There's probably plastic in me right now. Plastics throughout this museum. Plastics right in your hometown. You live on an island, the island of Newfoundland, lots of water, almost certainly there's a huge amount of plastic surrounding the island in the water bodies right in your backyard.
I'm gonna be honest with you, that actually makes me really, really angry. I love being around the water. I love to sail, I love to surf, I love to swim, and thinking about our oceans being destroyed is something that really bothers me.
Well, Mike, you're a researcher. I mean, you spend a lot of time on the water doing various activities, but maybe you should take a deeper look under the water and see what's going on. I think it might be eye-opening for you.
As someone who sails and surfs and scuba dives, I've spent a lot of time in and on the ocean, and I've seen it in all its glory. But for me, it's really hard to understand how something can be so beautiful on the surface, but suffering so much underneath. You know, I think about the ocean, I think about being pristine and beautiful, but environmental research is telling us otherwise. There's only one way to find out. Jeff connected me with the team at ACAP Humber Arm who were doing an ocean cleanup in the harbor in Burgeo. So I grabbed my scuba gear and headed west. Hey Brendan, how's it going, man?
Good, buddy. How you doing today?
Good, man. Thanks for having me down.
Yes, appreciate you coming down to give us a hand.
Yeah, so tell me what we're up to today.
So the plan is we're going to get in on the other side of the trailer here. We're going to scout the area. There's a lot of garbage. We've already hit this area around here. So we're going to pick up whatever we see. You know, plastic, tires. We found a few nets. So it's nice to see this stuff come out of the water. We'll gear you up right over by our trailer. We're going to get our diver ready here. And we'll enter the water over the side of the wharf, and we'll pick up the garbage as we go. Let's go get geared up and get in there.
Being so close to shore, I wasn't sure what to expect, but judging by the bins of garbage in the dock, it doesn't look like there was a shortage of stuff to clean up. When I dove in, I met up with the diver and we started in. It was a silty bottom, but even with low visibility, it wasn't hard to find garbage. Jeff was right. There was plastic everywhere, and not the kind of stuff you'd expect. There was old mats and toys and buckets and even house siding. If this is in our water, it's also likely in the life that lives in it and around the water, and that means us too. I don't think we consider how pollution not only impacts our environment, but our bodies and our health. I know I didn't. This has been a journey. I never would have thought that a conversation would open my eyes to the impacts we're having on a place that I call home. Whether it's thinning sea ice or plastic pollution, our most life-abundant ecosystem in the entire world is taking a massive hit because of our decisions. The question remains, is there any hope?
So Mike, I really want to thank you for joining us here in Burgeo today.
Thanks very much. It was interesting.
Yeah, for one of our underwater cleanups. I mean, you even got in the water and participated there for a bit. You got a view different than most people would see. I'm just, what did it look like down there?
Yeah, I was surprised. There was like typical seabed, kelp, and some sea life and all that stuff, but there was a lot of garbage. And when you pull it up and you pull up a mat or you pull up an old toy or a bottle or whatever, and I found that to be like a little bit alarming when you see how much is down there. And no matter where you look, there was always something to pick. So I'm sure you guys are going to stay busy for a while here. Now, when I think about like what you guys are doing here, it seems like you're making a pretty big impact. What's the goal of your whole project?
We've been working an awful lot in rural communities. And one of the issues we always hear, especially from the fishers, I mean, they're great stewards of the environment, they spend a lot of time on the water, is the historical accumulation of debris. Mm-hmm. Cleaning up shorelines relatively easy with volunteers, underwater cleanups, we require scuba divers and others. So we've been really fortunate now to be able to work all throughout rural Newfoundland, engage with local divers to begin to remove some of this debris and hopefully restore the habitat a bit.
So you guys are doing this, but you're also doing other initiatives to help the environment. What are some of the other things you guys are looking at here?
Yeah, so this is just one of the things we're doing in Burgeo, and we have a lot of initiatives in different rural communities. And, as an environmental organization, we're looking at the quality of the marine environment, but really it's bigger than that. We hear an awful lot about the challenges that are facing rural Newfoundland. Mm-hmm. But when we visit these communities and we see the scenery and we meet the people, there's just so much potential. Mm-hmm. And most of it is around our marine and coastal areas. Mm-hmm. So it's, how do we protect these areas? How do we conserve these areas? How do we promote them to help, sustain these rural communities? Mm-hmm. If we don't want to come in and do it mm-hmm. without the community support and without the community engagements, they take a sense of ownership.
Right. Coming here now and looking at this beautiful area and realizing there's garbage in the ocean right next to where people are living, it's a little bit alarming. So what would the average person, or what can the average person do if they wanted to make a difference?
Yeah, and certainly residents, if they're aware of it, are disgusted by it as well, and they want to see that action. On an individual basis, they can make sure that it doesn't reaccumulate, take care with their own debris or whatnot. But they can really support the work of groups like ourselves and raise awareness. Talk about it, let others know, let's make people aware of the issue, so hopefully we can prevent it from reoccurring in the future.
Well, that was intense. I didn't realize how close to home these environmental impacts were. But I also didn't realize how many people were dedicating their lives and their careers to making a positive change. We have to be realistic, and that is that we've only got one home in this planet, and we have to start treating it the same way we treat ourselves or anything we love. The question is, are you up for the task?